And we're back for the final round of the Modern 2K series of round number 6. We've got two decks on camera here that we've seen before. We've got Shad on Naya and James Combrink on Dredge. Shad has won the titles, decided to play first, and he's decided to take a mulligan. Who's going to be favored here?
As I said earlier when James played against Zoo in the first round, Dredge is favored if it's on the play at this point, and post-board Dredge is definitely favored. However, Shad's been running hard. I suppose both players are unbeaten at this point, and it could go either way, especially game 1. And Shad actually has a bit more interaction, so depending on how fast the hands are, Shad could still take game 1 even though James is favored. That's just the nature of Modern.
Yeah, those past the exiles in Shad's list are going to be important in the pre-boarded games. So Naya deciding to go down to 5 cards. Not the ideal start, not the one he was looking for. James has kept his 7, and with the power of the Dredge deck, this doesn't bode well for Naya.
The other thing is, Shad may still be able to do something with 5 cards if he gets a path and a creature, but doesn't look like these Zoo decks are giving their players many creatures in their opening hands, at least. Even though they play more than any other deck, really.
Oh, looks like Shad's going to 4. That's obviously not ideal for him.
And now it seems like the dial doesn't really matter.
So Shad on 4 cards. I mean, it's a reasonable 4. Scry Stirring Wildwood to the top. Plays the Forest, leads on Bird's Paradise. James throws a Mana Confluence. Plays a Blood Crypt, taps, passes back. Shad only with 2 cards remaining in his hand now, which are Ghost Quarter
and Dramoka's Command.
Dramoka's Command.
So Shad not doing too much this game unless he top takes some real gas at this point.
James, yeah, play Swamp. Taps his mana. And plays a Cathartic Reunion, discarding a life from the low mana Golgari Grave Troll. Dredges 6 for the Grave Troll. And it's a Stinkweed Imp, decides to reach that.
And he managed to, I think, 2 Narcomoebas off these, and then it's another Dredge 3 off the life from the now. The only thing that would make this start more explosive is if you hit any prize models. And Shad's just gonna casually use the Dramoka's Command to kill one of the Narcomoebas, pumping his bird up.
Shad plays out the Forest. Oh, decides against it. Chooses to play the Forest again.
And just attacks in for 3.
Just fires up that Stirring Wildwood.
How do you feel about this very aggressive play here from Shad, Hamza?
It looks like this is Shad's only avenue to victory, given a few resources he's got at his disposal at the moment. How long James allows him to deal damage is really just up to him at this point. So here we see James causing Collective Brutality and escalating it twice. We're using all 3 modes on the card. He'll give the Birds of Paradise -2/-2. James will gain 2 life, Shad will lose 2 life, and James will get to look at Shad's hand and remove an instant or sorcery card. Shad, revealing his hand, just reveals the Ghost Quarter. James plays a land, plays a Mana Confluence, returns 3 blood costs, and the prize amalgam will trigger on his end step. Shad's draw for the turn wooded foothills, and I think this game's close to done.
And at this point, I feel Dredge is really favoured in this zoo matchup. And maybe it's James just doesn't like zoos. I don't know. Could be a thing. Because Shad not getting creatures. In his earlier match, James' opponent also didn't get creatures at all.
Yeah, so
Morgan just...
So we see Shad scooping them up, and we'll revisit both players' sideboards now. The Naya Zoo sideboard, the one that we are familiar with at this point. It's 1 Ancient Garage, 2 Blood Moon, 1 Gadok Teak, 2 Kitchen Finks, 3 Core Firewalker, 1 Thundermaw Hellkite, 1 Waite, 1 Gideon Ally of Zendikar, 1 Grafdigger's Cage, 1 Rest in Peace, 1 Sogada Host of Herons. What do you like there?
Well, I think it's going to be much the same as Morgan's match. Shad's going to bring in Grafdigger's Cage, Rest in Peace. He's probably going to consider bringing in Kitchen Finks, just so he can gain some life. And it's an additional creature for him to have. I kind of like Gideon in the matchup, but I can see it being far too slow.
On James's side, we've got 3 Ancient Grudge, 2 Node to the Bone, 2 Dark Blast, 2 Lightning Axe, 2 Nature's Claim, 3 Golgari Charm, and 1 Vengeful Pharaoh.
In this situation, like, I actually think, because James is on the draw, he kind of wants to bring in those Dark Blasts since he saw Shad is playing Birds of Paradise, so you can assume Shad has Noble Hierarch as well. The North to the Bone is always going to be very good against aggressive decks, just because you get to gain so much life late game and it pushes you so far out of reach. Another card I'd like to see being brought in is probably the Golgari Charm and Vengeful Pharaohs. Maybe not Golgari Charm, but definitely Nature's Claim.
So as we wait for our players to shuffle up, we'd like to remind you again that you can find these videos on the Luck Shack Online, a YouTube channel. Like, share and subscribe to these videos, share them with your friends. Be sure to like the Luck Shack page on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and be sure to find any singles and seal product that you need at luckshack.co.za. Oh, the James here, ensuring that he's got 60 cards in his main deck for game 2. Smart enough man to know that counting your cards like this doesn't sufficiently randomize his deck. Just ensuring that he presents a legal deck before the start of the second game.
And if we look at the standings for this IQ, I believe Shad is first.
Shad is ahead in the 2K series.
And I believe you're second, Hamza, actually. So, in the next event, do you think there'll be a similar amount of similar decks at the event? Or do you think the meta will change completely, looking at Shad going almost unbeaten, not quite there yet, but generally pushing his lead ahead now on this deck? Do you think there'll be some hate for it next week? Well, next month?
I think the meta game's likely to stay largely the same. Modern decks are, it's relatively expensive investments, and not everybody has the card pool to chop and change as they please. Here we see both players drawing 7 cards. Shad looks like he's gonna mulligan again. James appears to be keeping his hand. Yeah, I think it's just important that Shad finds one of his hate cards here.
Yeah, in this type of match, if you don't get those hate cards to host Dredge, because Dredge is so explosive and actually really fast, you can just lose with anything below great hands. And it would actually be interesting to note that even if Shad mulls to say 5 or 4 like he did in the last game, if he manages to get Grafdigger's Cage and or Rest in Peace, it's going to shut James out long enough for him to get back into the game. And we'll see Shad take a look at his 6. Hand doesn't look amazing, but it is keepable. So Shad going to keep this guy. Plays, keeps it on top. And then we see, didn't matter where he scryed it, he was leading with the fetch land.
Yeah, so Shad plays his Noble Hierarch, searches up a Temple Garden, passes the turn. James plays a Bloodstained Maya first turn and passes back. We see James has the Golgari Charm in hand, so he's got a resting piece covered if Shad does cast it.
An interesting card to sort of bring into your sideboard if you have Knight of the Red Equity main board is probably Bajuka Bog. I'm actually surprised Shad doesn't have it in his 15 sideboard, but it is a card to consider because you could easily just ignore their hit by fetching a land. And then another interesting card to bring with it is probably Life from the Loam, which is actually in James' deck because you can end up recurring lands that you need for utility against certain matchups. So it's just an interesting thing you may want to see. And then we actually Scavenging Ooze, which is really strong against the Dredge deck.
So James sacrifices a Bloodstained Maya, searches up a Blood Crypt, takes 1 damage. Shad's an 18. So James plays and sacrifices a Wooded Foothills. Looks like he'll be casting Cathartic Reunion after he searches up his land.
Just deciding which land to fetch at this point, based on his hand.
Searches up basic Forest, and then we're likely to see James cast that Cathartic Reunion.
I don't actually think James will be incentivized to toss any creatures to this Cathartic Reunion just because of the Scavenging Ooze. I think he kind of wants to hopefully get a collective brutality to deal with it before it can get bigger.
So we see James not casting the Cathartic Reunion, just passes the turn back to Shad, and it's likely a function of the fact that Shad has left up 1 green mana for the Scavenging Ooze to eat a creature in the graveyard. So Shad activating Scavenging Ooze anyway, eating one of the lands in James's graveyard.
And this is actually pretty relevant because James does play Life from the Loam, so he can get extra card advantage from lands in his graveyard.
So May plays a Wooded Foothills for the turn.
Probably deciding whether or not he wants to attack this turn. I don't see a reason why not. And he also maybe wants to play that Loxin and Smiter in his hand.
So that Scavenging Ooze comes across for 3. 2+ takes all to trigger. James goes down to 16.
Well, actually, James is on 15, my bad, because he sacked 2 sacking rounds.
Shad just passing back. Holding up 3 green mana. Or threatening to hold up 3 green mana for the Scavenging Ooze. Now James casting Cathartic Reunion, discarding Golgari, Grave Trail and Stinkweed. Judge Call just occurring now. Plays 1 to check whether... I think Shad likely calling over Judge to check if he can exile the creatures before James gets the opportunity to dredge.
I believe you can, because the Cathartic Reunion is still on the stack. The discard is part of the cost card. So before the card actually dissolves, you could exile both creatures, which we see Shad do. So that Scavenging Ooze is actually gonna put him up to 16 and become a 4/4.
So James throws a Copperline Gorge, Faithless Looting, and a Bloodghast of the Cathartic Reunion. That Scavenging is doing a lot of work so far in this game. James certainly looking for a removal spell now. Probably one of his lightning axes. So James will cast that Faithless Looting. He throws 2.
At this point, even that Vengeful Fado is not going to do much because it will never sit in James' yard long enough. We're just waiting for James to decide what card to discard to this Faithless Looting. Looking like it's going to be a Mana Confluence and then probably a non-creature spell.
And a knock maybe. So I think this is just the plan for Shad for the rest of this game. To just protect the Scavenging Ooze as well as he can and just hold up green mana to threaten eating everything in James's graveyard. So this Ooze comes across for 5. And we see Shad with a Tireless Tracker in hand. Standard All-Star. Making an appearance in Modern.
Do you believe the card is strong enough to be in Modern?
The Tireless Tracker, I mean, it's definitely got the power level. It's certainly up there. It might not be as straight up as powerful as some of Modern's strongest creatures, but it's certainly got utility and a place in the format. We see Shad here playing a Wild Cattle, just increasing his clock while also still threatening Scavenging Ooze activations.
And I feel Shad will almost never leave less than 2 green mana open in this matchup with the Scavenging Ooze on the field.
It looks like the Scavenging Ooze is going to be Shad's route to victory here. And not finding one of his lightning axes proving to be James' undoing at this point. He also just needs to be aware that the Scavenging Ooze might be able to sneak out of range of a lightning axe if he does throw it. So he'll definitely be mindful of discarding any more creatures.
In fact, you can't discard a creature at all at this point because there's still the Nakamiba.
So Shad will exalt the Nakamiba, Scavenging Ooze will become bigger.
And Shad will go up to 17.
Shad moves to combat, attacks for 8 with a 5/5 Scavenging Ooze and 3/3 Wild Cattle. James chooses not to block.
Shad has
he'll go to 2.
Responses, goes to 2.
Passes back. So 3 green mana at the ready for May. He'll be looking to eat anything James dumps into his graveyard, and the draw for James is a Nakamiba. Not necessarily what he wants to see. Also happens to be uncastable with the lands he currently has in play.
And unfortunately, James can't even get blue mana at this point because he'd have to take 2 damage to shock at least, and 1 probably to sack and find. So there we see Shad does take game 2, and we're going to game 3. And before we take a look at the sideboards again, Hamza, do you feel that Shad will continue to mull to cards like Scavenging Ooze, Resting Beast, Grafdigger's Cage now that he's on the draw?
I think he's more incentivized to do it on the draw, considering he gets a scrying card. We see there how powerful one of his 8 cards was in the matchup. If he does draw Rest in Peace and Graph Digger's Cage, he does need to back that up with some sort of aggression, and that's what Scavenging Ooze provides. James did get off to a bit of a slow start, so that might not necessarily be the case again. James, now that is aware that Scavenging Ooze is in Shad's deck, also probably going to that'll probably also influence his mulligan decisions.
And it was interesting to see that James actually did bring in Golgari Charm in, and he was probably expecting some number of Rest in Peace. So it would be interesting to see if he sides them out for Nature's Claim and Lightning Axe. I'm assuming he probably didn't even consider bringing in Lightning Axe at that point, just to, based on the fact that his deck is the faster deck between the two.
Yeah, I think the Golgari Charms should probably just stay in the deck against any other white deck, since Rest in Peace is just so brutal.
But
for
would
the
you
Dredge
have
deck to play against.
Golgari Charm instead of Nature's Claim in this match?
I think that comes down to how many slots James has to sideboard out cards. We see him siding in the Lightning Axes now. Those weren't in his deck before.
Yeah, I assume James wasn't really expecting to see Scavenging Ooze. Probably just Rest in Peace Graph Digger's Cage. And interesting to note that Shad actually ran Scavenging Ooze main board. So it was pretty unlucky of him to have to mull to 5 game 1. Or 4 game 1.
So yeah, we see James just finalizing his sideboarding decisions.
And while they're sideboard, let's actually go take a look into the future. For this upcoming bans for Modern, do you think anything should be banned, and if so, why?
I think at the moment there's not necessarily anything that needs to be banned. I know that there's some calls for Infect and Dredge in particular to get nerfed. I don't think either deck has reached levels of oppression where it keeps things out of format, or it forces other archetypes out necessarily, like we saw with the Eldrazi decks of early in this year. I see that lots of people are advocating for the banning of Become Immense just because it happens to be a one card win condition. And I think if anything gets banned from the Infect deck, it's likely to be that from Dredge. I don't necessarily think anything needs to be banned, since there's so many hit cards across all the colors and throughout Magic's history. And both of those decks, if you come prepared to beat them, you can beat them.
Some people are saying that they might unban certain cards, especially on the MTG South Africa group, where Simon actually posted that they should unban Mental Misstep. And what is your view on that?
Mental Misstep's a really powerful magic card. And I think we can leave it at that. We see both players drawing 7 cards. Shad mulliganing again, deciding not to keep 7 cards in this match. Not sure if he just deliberately wants to make the match more difficult for himself, or if he just enjoys shuffling his deck.
Well, ignoring those possible facts, I feel Shad is attempting to mull to a Haymaker in this matchup. In fact, in game 1, because he knew he had Scavenging Oozes and both players sort of know what decks they're on, he probably tried to mull to Scavenging Ooze, or maybe just had bad hands. But in this game 3, I feel you kind of should want to mull to your answers.
So Shad looks at his 6. There's a lightning bolt in there.
Maybe incentivized to keep it, but doesn't look like there's...
So no Rest in Peace, no Graph Digger's Cage, but there is a Sagada Host of Heaven.
And that's actually an interesting card to bring in. I think it's mainly there to combat the conflict date on James's side, possibly also collective brutality.
Shad deciding where to put the scry at the top or the bottom.
And James's side actually looks pretty good in terms of he can actually get a prize of Amalgam into his yard turn 1 of that Faithless thing.
Yeah, so Shad decides to scry to the bottom. James leads on Mountain into Faithless looting, discards Stinkweed Imp and prized Amalgam. Shad will draw for the turn, he throws a Wild Cattle. Plays a Stomping Ground, untap, he'll take 2 damage. And casts a Noble High Rock.
And in this case, do you think James should attempt to bolt the bird, as they say, or ignore the high rock entirely? Because I do believe he does have a lightning axe in him.
Well, I think in this matchup with these linear sort of decks like Dredge, I don't think they need to be too concerned with bolting the Noble High Rock because they play so few removal spells. I think the biggest card James needs to worry about out of Shad's deck, outside of Rest in Peace and Craftica's Cage, is the Scavenging Ooze, and he'll probably just hold on to that Lightning Axe until then. So here we see James on the plate casting Cathartic Reunion, discarding Conflagrate and Stinkweed Imp, decides to dredge 5 of the Stinkweed Imp, flips over another prized Amalgam, Golgari, Grave Troll, double Conflagrate, and Wood of Foothills. He'll dredge another 6. And he'll dredge another 6.
And there we see the Nakamoeba and multiple prized Amalgams. So that could actually just be it from James' side. He's getting, I believe, he's getting 8 points of power. 11 points of power on turn 2.
And that just speaks to the explosiveness of this Dredge deck.
So are you sure the deck still doesn't need a ban?
I mean, I think this is the modern format that we live in. If there's a blighted agent on Shad's side of the field, he might just win.
Well, Shad would be on the draw, so actually it's more likely James would win at that point. But
so yeah, Shad so far behind at the moment.
there's not much you can do in this situation. His opponents already managed to get the prized amalgams onto the field, so even top decking something like Scavenging Ooze won't guarantee him even a shot at winning this.
Yeah, scouting Shad's deck list for a Declaration in Stone does not seem to have that card in his 75.
Anger of the Gods would have been
Clearly his
amazing,
mistake.
but Anger of the Gods isn't the card you'd play in a zoo deck, as far as I know. There could be some people who would like to play Anger of the Gods, but the risk of killing your own creatures is just too high.
Shad plays Windsweep Teeth, fetches Plains, Castle locks it on Smiter. King of the Casual Table locks it on Smiter. 4/4, no text. I suppose it's got a secondary ability.
2 secondary abilities, can't be counted, and gets to be put into play if your opponent forces you to discard it.
Not necessarily relevant in this match. So James casting the Faceless Looting. He'll dump more of his deck into his graveyard.
And there we see the last prized amalgam and 2 Nakamoebas.
So off the second Dredge, James choosing to return Dakma Salvage to his hand. James now with 16 power in play, 4 Nakamoebas, 4 prized amalgams.
Well, the 4th prized amalgam will only come back end of turn. So Shad having to take 8 year.
Only level 11 power eligible to attack.
And the interesting thing here is that Prize Amalgam dying is going to see this other Prize Amalgam come back, and actually James just plays the land, gets back a Bloodghast, so 2 Bloodghasts actually. So Shad is facing very lethal, extra lethal, super lethal if you play on the next turn.
Looks like Shad's draw for the turn was another Loxodon Smiter. Plays a Foothills, sacrifices it. Searches up a basic forest.
And at this point, what's going through my mind if I was Shad is, why am I not playing Anger of the Gods? Because Anger of the Gods in this board state would actually just, would maybe not wreck, but guarantee that James has no way of killing Shad in the next turn.
So you see James is 17 power in play, all of it eligible to attack. Shad has 2 Loxodon Smiters untapped and he still has a Lightning Bolt in hand. James decides to dredge the life from the lamb. Cost the life from the lamb.
And we may actually just see a conflict here, just to guarantee that Shad goes down this turn. James actually finding it hard to find the great lands.
Well, he's found the Conflagrate. Just returning the final land to his hand off the life from the lamb. Chooses Blood Crypt, Stomping Ground and Wooded Foothills. So this game is just an exhibition from James on how powerful this Dredge deck is and just how explosive it is. We see James shocking, playing the Stomping Ground for the turn and returning the Bloodghast with haste. James attacks for a whole bunch, Shad extends the hand, and that's game.
So we have a winner for this month's Modern 2K in James playing Dredge, and congrats to the winner.
Yeah, if you plan on coming to visit the Lack Shack for the next one, be sure to be packing your resting pieces and your Grafdigger's cages, because this deck is something.
Yep, something it is.
Alright, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.